I've been around the game of soccer all of my life, and a couple things I can guarantee you. One, every coach wants to win. Secondly, every parent wants their child to play and to, at some point, be the best on the field. And three, every child who plays soccer or plays a sport of any kind usually has aspirations of playing at a higher level, whether that's college or professional at some point in their playing career. But one of the things we don't put a whole lot of stock in, maybe as parents, as coaches, as fans of the game, is the earliest stages of player development. And so tonight, that's what we're going to talk about. We're actually starting a series tonight, a 3-week series on player development. Tonight, we're talking about the earliest stages, how players develop a love for the game, how players develop tactics, how players develop skills at the youngest ages. Next week, we're going to hit on the development phase that's kind of the middle school, early high school years. And then the third week, we're going to hit late high school, college prep kind of development for players that are at that level. So if you're a parent, you know someone that's in this age range, have kids that play, earliest stages, middle stages, or even late stages, looking at potentially playing in college, tune in for at least the next 3 weeks of Fort Wayne Footy. Tonight, we have a special guest in Matt Hein from Fort Wayne Sport Club to talk about a philosophy of training players at the earliest stages of their development. Stick around. We got that and more tonight in episode 29 of Fort Wayne Footy. This episode of Fort Wayne Footy is brought to you by OmniSource, one of America's largest processors, distributors, and managers of scrap and secondary metals based right here in Fort Wayne. Check out their services at omnisource.com. Fort Wayne Footy is also brought to you by LaserX, the Midwest's largest laser tag and arcade. They specialize in birthday parties, corporate team building, youth groups, sports teams, and family entertainment. I've personally scheduled events at LaserX for each of those scenarios just mentioned and have never been disappointed. You can find them at laserxfw.com. That's laser with a Z. And if you get over there, be sure to tell them Fort Wayne Footy sent you. Welcome to another episode of Fort Wayne Footy. Glad to be with you here tonight. Thanks for joining us. We've got a great show, as we mentioned in the intro. Matt Hein is joining us a little bit later to talk about player development. Each of our kids have gone through it. We know those of you who have been watching. Some of your kids have gone through the PDA Academy at Sport Club. Some of you have gone through player development at other clubs in town, United and others. And so I think it's an important piece of the soccer landscape in the United States. Things aren't perfect in the United States. We've talked about some of that stuff in as far as player development, but there's a lot of good things happening here in Fort Wayne across town that we're excited to talk about tonight. But before we get there, we got some other things to catch up on. I've got to first introduce you to my friends on screen here. My name's Brian. As always, here with you, I've got Dustin and Paul with me tonight to talk about this. Dustin, man, how are you tonight? It's been, I think you missed last week. Is that right?
Yeah.
Did we fire you last week?
Yeah, I was fired last week. I came back, just like Autumn. Like we go and we come back. No, doing well. I'm excited to talk about this. All three of my kids have gone through PDA, and so I think there's a lot to talk about. I think it's an interesting topic. I think Paul sent a message out to all the parents to tune in tonight. So I'm looking forward to our audience being a little higher in relationship to that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And Paul, man, I know you've done a lot of work behind the scenes for a lot of our shows. This one particularly, because I know you're really tied into PDA there at Sport Club. So we'll get into those notes in a little bit. But how are you this week, and what soccer have you watched this week?
Thanks. Always watching soccer. Watched a little bit of college soccer. Watched no high school because that's over now. But yeah, I think this week's a great topic. You know, we just this past Friday we started futsal. And it's a great transition from outside to inside. It's something new for some of the kids, and it's all part of the player development. So I'm really excited to see how these kids progress from, you know, this first week of futsal all the way through. It's like 14 weeks or so. But and another topic since we started futsal is I had a not so celebrity sighting. I know it's one of our recurring themes.
Okay,
Coach Alfonso. He's a fan of the show, and I didn't know it, and he was excited to say, "Hey,
oh, that's awesome! I didn't know that either."
Yeah. So
cool.
Shout out to Coach Alfonso.
Yeah.
I love it, man. I love it. It's fun, like, to hear you guys get recognized out in public and stuff, and nobody ever says anything to me, so which is fine. Whatever.
Being not recognized. So we started training at McMillan. And if you guys have ever been to McMillan, they have a rule about not wearing hats. And I'm pulling up, and I'm like, oh, I can't wear a hat. And I'm like, I almost always wear a hat. And I'm in there, and I literally heard from 5+ parents, directly or indirectly. They said, we didn't know who that was out there because I wasn't wearing a hat.
Didn't have a hat.
Nobody without a hat on. I mean, I do have hair under here, but it was just funny. So.
Yeah.
I was at Skyline Chili today for lunch, and I'm wearing my Fort Wayne Footy beanie, and got asked, like, what is that? So it is fun wearing stuff around and have people asking, like, what is that? What do you guys do? And all that. So anyway, shout out to Coach Alfonso. Thanks for tuning in and what you do there, training kids. We talk about a lot of soccer here, right? And so Fort Wayne Football Club is like, they're getting ready for preseason. We're kind of in this lull right now. High school's finished. Club is like just starting this week, some indoor stuff. Summit City United doesn't start till next week. And so we thought, this would be a good time to introduce this topic, but there is still some local soccer happening, right? So we're in the college postseason right now, and some of our local teams are doing pretty well in the postseason. So last week we talked to Emerson Nieto from Indiana Tech. They won their semifinal game yesterday against Northern Ohio University, and moving on to the championship game at Madonna next. It's this Wednesday, actually, 2:00 on Wednesday, which is a weird time for conference championship game. Yeah.
There's a lot
old at 2:00.
Yeah, that's true. There is, though. I mean, it is a lull kind of, but it's also like a super exciting time because you've got the conference championships. We were talking earlier about the ACC women's and men's championships. The championship was today for the women's. It's quarterfinals for the men's, and so there's a lot of really good college soccer out there still, being played. So I'm excited. I love the NCAA tournament for soccer. I love watching around the country, seeing the up and coming players. Some of the players are, playing and getting called up to have some opportunities as well. So it's kind of fun to watch and see them play for their schools.
Yeah. So we got Indiana Tech moving on their championship. So back kind of the local scene here, PFW men in the Horizon League, they got a first round bye in their tournament, and they'll play, I believe it's on Wednesday is their first match. So I think my son's team is taking the night off of training to go to that game. Watch. So that should be fun. We've got, unfortunately, several teams that were knocked out early stages in their tournament. The Huntington men, the St. Francis men, and the St. Francis women were all knocked out early in their conference Crossroads tournament. So if you're looking for games to go to watch, PFW Wednesday, Indiana Tech, they're not at home now. They're the number 2 seed playing at the number 1 seed, Madonna, in the WAC tournament. But yeah, Dustin, you mentioned soccer outside of this area a little bit too. Major League Soccer's in the postseason right now. I got the opportunity, I posted on my story yesterday, to go to the Columbus-Cincinnati match in Cincinnati, which was crazy if you were fans of either team. But Cincinnati thankfully pulled it out in the end, had to come from behind to win that game. But just an incredible, I love the playoff atmosphere, whether it's, local club tournament to, college soccer to Major League Soccer. The playoff atmosphere is a lot of fun. One thing we haven't talked a whole lot about that I wanted to get into here shortly after this series maybe is introduction to USL 1 and USL 1 teams as Fort Wayne Football Club is moving into that division next year. They're in their postseason playoffs right now too. And so the second semifinal is being played, I think, tonight at 9:00. So it might be on currently. It's who's playing in this one. This is the Eastern Conference, I believe. One Knox.
I was going to say Knox won yesterday, didn't they?
Yeah, maybe they won yesterday. Maybe tonight is Western. Maybe it's the other conference. It's Portland Hearts of Pine, which they're Eastern, I think. I don't know if they do conferences or not. It's Portland and Spokane is playing tonight. right now. So anyway, we want to introduce you to some of those teams through some of their local media and local podcasters. And so we're going to be bringing them on here in the coming weeks and months to talk a little bit about USL 1 and what we can get into. So if you're interested in that, we would love to welcome you in. But we want to get into what we promised you tonight is the young player development. Like how, like we can talk college, we can talk professional, but all of these players started somewhere. They fell in love with the game. They fell in love with how to play the game. They learned how to play a ball, to pass a ball, to receive a ball, learned how to move on the field. All that happens when they're young, right? And if we go back, guys, to when we started playing, like I don't know if you played as a kid or not. It was very, very different. So if you're over the age of, let's say 25, 30 years old, the way you started playing soccer then is so different than the way your kids are growing up playing soccer now. And so to get into that discussion, we thought we'd bring in a local expert in Matt Hein. I'm going to bring him up on the screen here to talk a little bit about that. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Good. How you doing, Brian?
Good, man. I know my son is and Paul's kids and Dustin's kids have all been a part of your coaching through the years. And so it's good to have you on because of that reason, the personal connection. But you've developed a player academy, player development academy at Fort Wayne Sport Club, and really focused on helping kids fall in love with the game. And to fall in love with the game, they got to learn the game. They got to have fun playing the game. And so we just thought, because of all that local connection, personal connection, that you're the guy that we want to talk to tonight. There's other clubs doing this, but you're the guy we want to talk to about this age group. So we just had some questions we want to talk with you about. And if you have questions, to throw at us, because, you know, we've all coached with you. We've all been parents of kids that you've coached outside of that too. Feel free. So, Matt, I just kind of said, as we were bringing you on, the way our kids are learning to play the game is so different than the way you and I learned to play the game when we were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Let's start there. What has changed in the landscape of soccer that when I went out, I started playing 11v11 immediately. And now we're playing small-sided games. Why has that changed? Why has that shifted? And what have you seen as far as player development out of that shift in American soccer at the youngest age?
I think the first thing is it's so much more structured now than it was when we were growing up. I think that's the biggest one. But you know, when you put these kids, especially these young kids that we start in the PDA program at 5, 6, and 7 years old, you know, put them on a 5v5 field versus a 11v11 field. You know, you're talking tons of more touches, more confident in themselves. Just being able, like you said earlier, to fall in love with the ball is the main thing that these kids have to do. And I think the landscape now is that kids typically just don't go out there like we did and just play in the neighborhoods and just do the pickup style. And I think that's the one thing that we have to implement in our training sessions that we could just do in the neighborhoods. But the small sided stuff is just, I can't stress the importance of that at any level, to be honest with you, not even just in the youth, because you are just the confidence and all that stuff. So
what is it about the small-sided games? Like, there's more touches on the ball, that's for sure. I think Todd is backstage feeding us some statistics, and I think we were talking beforehand. Is it like 96% of the game, 86% of the game? If you're playing 11v11, you don't have the ball. Like, you're doing something different. You're scanning the field. You're making a run. You're trying to open up space. You're doing something different. But at the earliest ages, if you're standing around, like I played baseball, like I played t-ball. You've seen the crazy, videos of t-ball on social media. Like when somebody's not actively involved in catching a ball, or sometimes they are, you know, they're dancing in the outfield, like they're, you know, picking weeds.
Picking dandelions.
Yeah. And so soccer, you don't want that, right? You got to constantly be moving. So the small-sided games gets more players engaged and involved, touching a ball more frequently. So I think that's one big step in that direction of getting, you know, if you got to fall in love with the game, you got to have a ball at your foot, right? Everybody wants that to play. So I do think that's a big thing that's changed in the last couple of years. So as you look at that, like, how does that play out in PDA? Like, what is it? How do you organize? How do you get kids involved in these small-sided games at that level?
I think back to the small-sided stuff. I think the other thing is, you know, when you're in that small environment, you can't hide. And I think as you get older, you know, you go to a tryout and you're even at a high school tryout and they're playing 11v11, and you can kind of hide yourself a little bit. You put yourself in a 3v3, 4v4 situation, you can't really hide. So, I mean, it just teaches you so much about, you know, the ball, how to open up space, you know, so on and so forth. So, the one thing that we did implement this year, and I've done it in the past, we did this optional play is what we called it, just kind of free play on Mondays. And we had ages, you know, our youngest kids to our oldest ages, which are pretty much U6 to U10. And there was just open play. You know, the young kids kind of stayed together, the older kids stayed together. It kind of depended on who came. Did we play 4v4? Did we play 5v5? Did we play 7v7? So on and so forth. So, I mean, and there was no coaching. You know, we had just parents or coaches there to monitor the games, but there was nobody like directing them where to go, what to do. And the kids, I mean, we had a great participation this year. So it's something we'll continue to do. But I think there's got to be, I'm a big fan, you know, as long as I've done this, I think there's got to be some balance in training, but also balance of letting the game be the teacher. And I think that stems from, you know, growing up in these, and for me, in my youth, is just with no coach around and just in the schoolyard or with your friends where, you know, you're trying things that typically you might not try in a more of a structured setting. So how do we implement that in our sessions is kind of something that me and Paul talk about constantly, you know, and you see as the kids progress through, you know, I feel like we have some pretty confident kids on the ball, especially as they grow through the program. But that's in kind of in a nutshell what I've kind of witnessed and seen over my time here in the program. And, you know, I think the other thing that I love about the program, even more about that, is, you know, we're all about, you know, giving kids chances. I think that, you know, yeah, we have to make cuts because we don't want to be you know, another rec program, but, you know, I'm going to give a kid definitely a chance that I see that has, you know, is a coachable kid, has a good attitude, and we put them in the setting, and you just never know what these kids can accomplish. And that's one thing that Paul and I have really, really strived to, you know, to do in the program. And again, it's not perfect. And some kids, you look at them like, oh my gosh, this just doesn't work out. And then the other ones are like, oh my gosh, this was kind of a low man on the totem pole, and, you know, worked himself up. So it's been a lot of fun. And that's the best part for me, is just watching these young kids. They're like sponges. You know, you give them some information and they just absorb it like crazy. And you just never know. I think, you know, kids will really, really, they're amazing when you give them the chance. They're very, very smart, but sometimes we don't give them that chance. So
yeah.
Hey Matt, and that
hopefully
pickup
that answered.
soccer, we had not just when we train, it's typically with your age group. But the nice thing about the pickup, or on the playground or wherever, you're typically playing with kids maybe a little older or a little younger than you. So you get the opportunity to maybe play with kids who are bigger, faster, maybe better than you. And that's a nice mix of skill sets where the older kids can help the younger kids, and then the younger kids can kind of learn from the older kids. And I think that's hopefully what those Monday nights are doing, where you just part of the free play. You know, the age is less of a restriction when it comes to that as well.
Yeah. And then go ahead, Matt.
I had thanks for saying that, Paul. So what we did is we had an hour and a half the first 30 minutes, whoever showed up, if I had a 5-year-old with a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old, I did skill stuff, basic skill stuff. Some was pretty advanced, but I had a parent that was one of the youngest kids that came up to me and said, I know my daughter is not even close to as good as these kids, but it's awesome for her to try it and see it, and it was, again, I was by myself with, 40 and 50 kids. I wasn't going to ask these coaches to come out and help me. Something that I just wanted to kind of do to, kind of maybe perk up the program a little bit. And it was just nice to get some feedback from them. And like I said, I think we have like 120 kids in the program right now. I think on average, we have between 30 and 40 kids on a Monday, which on an optional day, that's pretty good. Not perfect.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Dustin. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. No, I was just going to ask, talk to us a little bit about the technical side, and then like when you move from technical skills at the beginning to then more of a tactical understanding of the game of soccer, and kind of how you implement that in the training.
Okay. Well, anybody who knows me, I'm just a fanatic obsessed with fundamentals, because I think, even at the highest level, I mean, these guys are their touch on the ball is just so, they do everything simple, good all the time. And I think kids are just so sporadic with it, but the more and more and the more they do it, the more cleaner they're going to get, the more fundamental sound they're going to be, yada, yada, yada. So I look at it like this. My old club coach told us years and years ago, it's like going and fixing a car. You can know everything about how to fix the car, but if you don't have the tools, you can't fix it. So I think that's the same thing. We go into the sporting world, is like, you can know where to run, you can know how to do this, but if you don't have the tools and fundamentals, it just doesn't do a whole lot. So I think, I think that you can definitely tactically, talk about shape really, really early on, talking about, triangle shape, which that's something that I just drill in these kids' head nonstop. But again, if they can't pass and receive, a triangle shape can be a little bit, but everybody that's 3 and 4 years old knows what a triangle looks like. So I think, tactically, it definitely depends on a team. I look at it, some of our teams, some of them move the ball probably a lot better than others. And a lot of it just stems from fundamentally. They're just better fundamentally. So that kind of, for me, is a little bit, I feel like fundamentals is going to beat a tactical team more so than a less fundamental team that's more tactical. And that's just, that's a preference for me. So, I want the ball. I want to have the ball more than the other team, create the opportunities, yada, yada, yada. So, I'm more geared toward fundamental. So the tactical side, I think that you can just kind of, I think it's one of those baby steps that you can continue to teach those tactics as they go, into the ages. So I don't know if I'm answering that question like you wanted to, but that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah.
I think to add to that, Matt, I remember when my son was playing, and something you had shared, and the sentiment that was shared across the development academy was, we're going to lose some games, right? We're gonna teach how to play the ball. We're going to teach how to move the ball. We're going to teach the fundamentals, the triangles, and we may lose some games because of that. But when it matters, these kids are going to know how to move the ball. When it matters, when they're 15, 16, 17 years old, they're going to be comfortable with the ball, and they're going to be comfortable with the tactics they've learned along the way. So I think even that is teaching. It's fundamentals on the ball. Tactics, you're absolutely right. Tactics mean nothing if you can't control a ball, right? Fundamentals mean something. But even in the way that you were teaching players, even the way anybody, like teaching players to move, the shape that they can move in, is teaching early tactics, really, really simple tactics. Like it's not, formations of 5-back versus 4-back or whatever, but it's what do you do in small spaces? That's what really matters on a soccer field. Everything is happening in small spaces, unless you're kicking the ball, from the goalkeeper to your number 9 on a sprint down the sideline, right?
So they're kicking the ball to the goalkeeper, right? That's something we struggle with.
Right. Yeah, okay. That too. But in the sense, I want to go back to, we look at the structure of American soccer, right? And I know some people feel like the system's broken in many ways because it's so structured, because we have so much coaching. And I like what you're doing with the Monday night free play. That sounds like a really interesting way to get kids into let's just play. Like you look at other cultures, South American cultures, European cultures, that are putting out, the best teams in the world, best players in the world. And they're growing up not without a lot of coaching. They're playing in the streets. They're playing street soccer. They're playing small-sided games at the park down the street from their apartment building, right? And there's not a lot of structure. They get identified by coaches that come out and watch and go, hey, you should join our club. And that's how, the best players get identified and they get pulled in. The rest of them continue to play on the streets, in the fields. And so I think the thing about that, and you've already hit on this a little bit, is it allows players creative freedom to try something that they saw their favorite professional player do, or to try something they saw their older brother or sister do, and not get yelled at for doing something that didn't work out well. Right. So I love as frustrating as it can be as a parent, right? And watching and going, oh man, why did he do that? I do enjoy watching kids be creative and try something at a young age, because sometimes it works. And you see their confidence just build and go, I could do that. And I could do something else. Right. So I love that you have built that into the system. But are you seeing players that are a part of that? Like the ones that really love the game, I imagine, come to that, right? They don't come and say, I'm going to be a better player because I come on Monday nights and there's no coaching, right? They come because they love the game, but you probably see some of the better players develop out of things like that. Is that a good assumption?
I mean, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of the kids that came consistently were ones that were probably some of the better ones, for sure. And again, I think it's just, it's a love for the game, like you said. And I mean, I think the one thing I might be a little bit off that kind of ties into this. I think that, I never, as a player, granted we didn't have this or didn't have the money, but this personal training stuff for these kids constantly. These parents ask me at 8, 9, hey, do I need to go get a personal trainer? What do I need to do? What do I need to work on? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, you don't need to do that stuff. You go out there and just play with the ball, watch the game, watch, find a favorite team, find a favorite player and try to mimic that person and just go out there and enjoy doing that. And I think that so many of these kids are kind of sometimes even forced in it. They might want to do it, but do they really, really want to do it? There's mom and dad saying, hey, I'm going to drop you off and you're going to go play with a trainer for an hour. So I think we are getting some kids that love the game, but I would say maybe half really love the game. I think maybe the other half like the game, if that's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we creating fans of soccer too? Right. It's not just going out to practice. Do you really want to go to the backyard and dribble around? Do you want to work on juggling? Do you want to watch soccer on TV? Because I think it's not just going to training twice a week and going to the games on the weekends. Am I more of a rounded fan, just a fan of the game? Because if you watch professional soccer, to your point, you're gonna see what it looks like. What does really good soccer look like? So you're gonna go watch, Man City, if you've heard of them, and see what possession looks like, right? But if you're not doing that, then how do you know what you're trying to emulate?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's key. And I also think that, Matt, when you say that, we've seen kids that have been forced to do it. And it's not fun. It's not fun from an outsider's perspective to watch that. It's not fun for the kid to be pushed into it. And so I think you do flesh that out maybe a little bit in the, the development, the PDA program. But I was going to ask you, kind of like jumping into like the next portion, is so when we talk about PDA, we talk about rec, so recreational league, that kind of stuff. For you, when would you, so for parents that are listening or that are tuning in, what would you say to them as far as when is the time that you should jump or make the jump from rec league to, PDA to the travel side of things? And is it dependent on the kid, or what's kind of your viewpoint on that?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it's definitely kid by kid,
Mm,
their interest level for sure. I think the parents know their kids pretty well, hopefully.
mhm,
Um, but we've had some young kids come even a little bit earlier than we would like them to, just
mhm,
because they love it so much, and you don't want to neglect that from them if they really really enjoy it. So
mhm,
I think it's pretty much just a a kid by kid basis
mhm,
when it comes to that. So the I guess the other thing is, I know we talked a little bit about early on before we started the show, is these kids being involved in other activities as well, which I'm a huge fan of, especially the school stuff. So now now you're balancing, these parents are balancing, not just their soccer, but their basketball. And maybe they got three siblings. They're trying to balance all these different
mhm,
activities along with that. So, when you got a kid that really, really enjoys it, and they've got siblings and they're going to these other games, and they're doing this, and this kid is still out there anytime they get a chance, touching the ball, watching, that to me is showing like, hey, I really want to, I'm an advocate of the game. I really want to be a part of this. I want to be good at it. So, and I think every situation, family dynamic is different.
mhm,
My own personal family, I mean, I didn't know Cecilia, my youngest one, would ever play, but she's been around watching all the other kids, and she's finally gotten interested in this
Mhm.
year, and she's not great, but she enjoys it. So
mhm,
we'll see how that goes.
yeah,
And Bo, my youngest boy, he just has to survive. So if he can't survive, he's not get the older kids won't let him play. So
mhm,
he's probably my most aggressive one, just
mhm,
because he's had to be.
mhm,
So I think a lot has to do with a little bit of their family, their dynamic at home, and just kind of how the parents, go about that stuff. So
mhm,
just my take on that.
yeah,
I want to continue this part of the conversation. I think there's more we can get into. We got a comment in here from Road Bike 42 that it's really hard to navigate that jump from rec to competitive soccer if you're not familiar with the soccer ecosystem. So I want to get back to that in just a minute, but I want to get to our next sponsor of the show. And so we will be right back. This portion of the show is brought to you by Dead One Pest Control. If you've been looking for a local pest control service in Fort Wayne and surrounding communities, look no further than Dead One Pest Control. They work with both residential and commercial clients to get rid of all types of pests, including those dreaded bed bugs. No job is too big or small for them to handle, so you can count on their capable crew for whatever local pest control service you need. Reach out today to schedule an appointment at deadonepestcontrol.com. And remember, the only good pest is a dead one. I love that tagline. Only good pest is a dead one. On that note, let's get back to making the jump from rec, from PDA to like travel soccer and things that actually happens at an older age. Typically, I know PDA gets into like Indiana Soccer League, the ISL, and so there is a little bit of travel involved in that to get families used to, not just players used to the competition, but families used to making a drive on a Saturday for a game or a Sunday to go to, South Bend or to go to Indianapolis, or I don't know how far you're traveling at that age group, but it is an interesting time to think about. So many parents go like, I don't know what I'm getting into. Like I get phone calls from friends of they have young kids. They're like,
mhm,
I don't know what I'm getting into. What does travel soccer look like? What does that mean? Like your team is going to like Pittsburgh to play games. Is that going to happen when I'm like 8 years old? What does that look like? So, from a parent's perspective, like what do you tell parents at that age group, not just the players, but what do you tell parents like in parent meetings, or parents give you a phone call and be like, what does travel look like? Like, what do I have to look forward to as a parent of a young player that's really interested in loving the game? How do you help parents navigate that?
Well, we started the PDA program. Like this year, our youngest kids are 2019 and 2018. So those kids train twice a week, like in the fall, and then they just play locally games in our rec program on Saturdays. So it's pretty minimal. It's an extra training. It's a little bit longer season than like the actual recreational. And then the ISL kids, they train twice a week as well. And then when they do the games, they do the double headers. So typically we have about 10 games. This year, I think maybe we had 3 away and 2 at home, something like that. I think the way this program is situated, it's just such a great middle ground before they get into the U11 travel side. So what I tell the parents is, give it a try, give it a season, see if it's something that the family can swing financially, just the commitment, the time, the other siblings they might have. It's just such a really, really good middle ground to just kind of test the waters. We're one of the only clubs that kind of offers it in this kind of capacity. A lot of clubs are doing it traveling at U9, like full travel at U9, where they're doing tournaments and all that stuff. And these kids don't do any tournaments. It's training and league games and friendlies. So I think, at least I hope, and I know if we try to get feedback from families that have gone through the program, that, are you prepared when they get to U11? Because at U11, now you're training 3 times a week. Now you're adding tournaments. Now you're adding a little bit more. Now, when you're going to games, you're not doing double headers. You're going for one game. So you might drive 2 hours to play one game. So I think the one thing that I love about our club is that I think the leagues that we're in, I think we do a really good job of keeping things in perspective. We don't travel super, super far. And honestly, we really don't need to. I mean, Indy's probably the farthest that any of our teams need to really go to get competition. So I really appreciate that part of us. That's kind of in a nutshell, like the steps we do. And I think the hardest ones are the ones like, let's say they're a 10U, they're in the spring season, they have one season with us, and then they have to say, okay, I had one season, am I ready for the 11 travel? That's not a lot of time to kind of figure out, hey, was this enough? But the worst is when you go straight from the rec to the travel side, where there's not that, that middle ground where, like, hey, I can see kind of what it somewhat looks like. So,
yeah, I agree with that, Matt. My daughter, she's 16 and a half now, and she started at Sport Club PDA, and she's gone through the whole progression. I was on a really good team at Sport Club, then a really good travel team at Sport Club, and then she eventually reached a point where she's like, I'm looking for even more. So now she's playing on a team out of Indy, looking to play in college. But I field a lot of these questions from the PDA parents because they're like, well, we're not sure we're ready to travel with PDA. And I said, well, if you're not ready for travel in PDA, it's travel-ish, then you have no idea how big it gets. But try to give them an impression for how big it can get. Especially if you're looking to play at a higher level, and especially if you're on a team that's really competitive, it can get really big really fast. So I think it's a great question that parents ask about. And it's not just soccer. You ask anyone who's doing like cheer or baseball or hockey, it all gets nuts. It's just what's your flavor that your kid is into, right?
Yeah. I think that's the thing that some people cite as maybe that's what's wrong with American sports, is because the travel is so much and so involved. It does get expensive the more you get into it. Is there a better way to do it? And maybe there is. Right now, that is the landscape of what it is, and it's hard to work outside of that. I know, Matt, like you said, you do the free play Monday nights. I know of some friends in Cincinnati that are doing Cincinnati street soccer, and it's just free. Come play. We'll set up goals for you. Your parents can hang out around the sidelines. We just want to get something out there for kids in the city to be able to come out and play that maybe aren't making it out to the suburbs, to the clubs to play, or can't afford it or whatever. So I think there are people doing things to get talented players in, and I know there's a lot of partnerships being built with other clubs in Fort Wayne and other, I know the Latino League and has been playing in some other leagues, and Sport Club's been playing in their indoor league for years. And so it's just a fun way to mix styles of soccer, but also get players who aren't playing at this club or that club to be able to play, give them another level of competition too. So it is what it is right now. Maybe it'll change, maybe it won't. I don't foresee it changing anytime soon. But Paul, to your point, like if you don't understand, if you can't get your mind around traveling to it was maybe Indianapolis, hour and a half.
Phoenix next weekend, Phoenix, Arizona for a tournament.
Yeah. If you're like, I can't get my head around traveling to Indy, and maybe it doesn't have to be that way, right? We did travel to Pittsburgh, we traveled to Detroit, we traveled to Louisville, Kentucky for league games, but that's the way it is if you play at those higher levels. So that's a discussion I think we'll get into more next week as we get into the full field travel. Academy style, like what that looks like. We'll get into that more this next week, but I do think it's important to, in the context of this conversation, to say, here's what the next step is. Like, let's look at this. So for that sake, it's good. One thing I do want to say, I did want to share a story real quick, and we've got another comment in the chat here. I'll throw up on screen in a minute, but as far as we had the conversation about tactics versus technical skill, playing small-sided games, and what's the age breakdown when they go from playing 7v7 to 9v9 to 11v11? I don't remember that age breakdown. Paul or Matt, do you guys have that off the top of your head?
Yeah, 10U is 7v7, 11U and 12U is 9v9, and then 13U is 11v11.
Okay. So, Matt, you may remember the story because I think you were coaching the 2009 boys at the time. And we had they had just gotten beat. I think it was like 7-1 to junior Irish. And it was just like parents were frustrated. Kids were like, I just want to go home. And we saw a parent from the other team march across the field and start talking to our team. And us as parents were like, what is happening? And why is Matt letting him talk to our team? But so I asked Asher when he came over, and my son was just like, I said, what did that guy say? He said, well, he asked Matt, first of all, can I talk to your team for a minute? And Matt said yes. But his comment was, the style of soccer that you guys play, it's not going to work on the small field, 7v7 or whatever, because we just have one kid that is fast and over the top. But when we play on a big field next year, we're not going to be able to touch you guys because you play the style where you pass the ball and you let the ball do the work for you. And our guy that's really fast is going to make one run and he's going to be winded and he's not going to be able to keep up. So came over to really encourage the players. And so I do think, you talk about fundamentals, but there is a technical and tactical side of that you are teaching at that level, that referees recognized, other coaches recognized, and then this parent that had apparently played at Notre Dame or something came over and recognized and said, what you guys are doing is going to carry you farther than what this team is doing. And I think we beat them 3-0 the next season. It was like just that switch was incredible. So the things that kids learn at the early age, if they're willing to sacrifice some goals at times, but to learn the fundamentals that they can learn at that age and fall in love with the game, pays off as the field gets bigger because they do understand how to move a ball. So, Matt, anything I know you remember that story. I saw you smiling a little bit. Yep. Anything you would add to that?
Well, I mean, just to kind of add with that, I think, and I do, I have the 12U right now. And I can't tell you the countless times I get off the field with the referees and coaches and, just being very complimentary of the way we play and what we're trying to do. And again, a lot of times it doesn't reward us on the scoreboard for sure. But I think that the thing that's frustrating for me to watch in the States is that teams aren't willing to do that is because of the risk of losing. So if you think about it, just a trickle down effect. If you lose, you're not going to get the best players. You're not going to get the best players. You're not going to get in the top division. So it's a snowball effect. That if we would just all be willing to just delay gratification for a little bit, learn how to build out of the back, learn the fundamentals, make mistakes, play your goalkeeper, get those kids comfortable. I mean, it's just going to be so much better. But that people aren't willing to wait. They want it now. And I don't know anything that's great right now. You know, it just takes so long to develop this. And, you know, I that's what I love about the 11s and 12s. I feel like you can get a really good grasp on them. That's a great age. They're sponges still. But the countless times, you know, we lose in games is just, it's a lot. I mean, my losing record is, I mean, I lose a lot of games that I know I probably could win if I would just change, but I'm not willing to, you know, and I know some parents look at me like, oh my gosh, you know, and so sometimes, you know, it takes, and a lot of times I don't even get to, you know, enjoy the winning part because they're on to the older ages and, you know, then they get to win the games and stuff like that. So I just feel like overall you have to decide what you want to do as a coach and as a club. You know, you have to, you know, distinguish, do you want to develop? Do you truly want to develop, or you want to do it when it's convenient? You know, when you're up 2-0, let's play our goalkeeper. When you're up 3-0, when it's a tight game, it's 2-1, it's 1-0, like, do you still want to try to do what you're doing? And, you know, that's the one thing that I can say, look at myself in the mirror every night and be like, I won't change. I stick to my guns. You know, anybody who knows me, I'm not going to change to get a W. And it's just, and some people, like, they might not like it, but winning is definitely going to take care of itself as they get older. So I think that's my biggest take from this conversation is you got to delay gratification, got to learn, you got to develop, you got to make mistakes, you know, in order to be good at something. So.
Well, and I think that that's good for parents to hear too, because I think when you're just jumping into it and you have no experience in that, you're gung ho. I want to win. I want to win. Why are we playing out the back? Why are we doing this? Why are we not winning games? Why are we not, you know, and then, well, if we're not going to win games at this club, we're going to go somewhere else, you know? And so having a parent hear that from you and hear that, the tactic and the understanding of that is because we want to grow these kids. I think that's super important for parents to understand. And it's hard, especially if it's your first kid and you've never gone through it before. Now that we're at our third, I'm like, dude, just get used to it. Like learn this, you know, like, it's like, we see it, we've seen it, you know, come to fruition. So I think that's really important for parents to hear and understand.
Yeah, I'm less concerned with winning this U10 game right now. Like Matt said, I'm more concerned about winning the game 2-3 years down the road. And it takes a little bit of patience, takes a lot of bit of work, but those that do it, trust me, it works.
Two things. We had a comment here from Road Bike 42 again. Strategic losing is where kids learn the most. I do think there's something about learning from failure, losing a game, but it's not even learning from failure at that point. Other than the game was lost, you're learning how to play the game and a style of play, and you're not changing that, right? So when you get to the, you know, 14, 15-year-old, you know, play, and you're like, I know how to play this style. I'm comfortable playing out of the back because I did it and I lost for so many years. I learned how to avoid those pitfalls, right? So there's something about the resilience of a player who has grown up through, you know, a program where we're going to play a style, we're going to lose some games, and we know that going in, but when it matters, it's going to pay off. So quick example, and this is, you know, this could happen at any club in Fort Wayne, any club around the country. But we talked the other day, I don't even know if it was even on the show, but there were 2 semifinal or regional final matches happening in Fort Wayne. It was Lures was playing Leo boys, and Carroll was playing Homestead boys. And we looked around, and on the 2009 boys team, many of whom, not all, but many of whom who played in PDA or at early travel level, in that club together, there were 14 players from the one team on those 2 fields, 7 in the Homestead Carroll match and 7 in the Leo Lures match. And so there is something about what they learned then and the success that they and their teams are experiencing even outside of the club on their high school teams there too. So I do think there's something valuable there. Also wanted to share this comment from Rob earlier about the Monday free play. Said my 6-year-old daughter loved the Monday optional practice. It was her favorite of the week because she got to go up against some of the older kids and it helped her to be more aggressive. So absolutely, there's something valuable there. Dustin, I was going to throw you a question and ask you, like, if we had time to get into talking to parents more, like navigating, the direct to travel stuff. But what you just said about, parents coming in, I'm not sure, I never played soccer. What's the landscape of soccer? And they come into a club, and their team's winning, their team's losing, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, what are the expectations that you would say, what are things you would tell parents to expect beyond the travel? But kids at playing at, what does competitive mean, right? At 5, 6, 7 years old. But what would you tell a parent? Like, this is what you should expect if your kid is just starting out at this age level, because you've had 3 go through it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I feel like I have this conversation with my parents and my like in-laws on a consistent basis of this is not about winning. Like, these kids are, they're not going to win games. And so I think the biggest thing is that you're coming in, these kids are developing their skills to be good soccer players and to know the game of soccer. And so that's the ultimate goal. We're not looking at, let's be honest, the kids keep track of the score every single game. Like, they'll be done at the end of the game, like, oh, it's 5-6. And I'm like, I don't even know what the score was. Like, we weren't paying attention to it. They're keeping score. But at the end of the day, they're learning how to connect passes. They're learning how to play out of the back. They're learning those skills that are going to build upon as they get older. And so that's the biggest thing I tell any parent the first year that they're going, because I get questions. I worked in peds, so I got questions all the time. Where should my kid go play soccer? Where should my kid go play soccer? And I used to always say, I'd be like, you need to learn how to play the game first, because I'm going to tell you, there are some clubs that will just throw you out on a field and say, just go play. And I'm like, if you're not developing those skills, that player will fall off 2-3 years from now. And so ultimately, you're coming in, you're learning how to play the game, you're learning how to be a good teammate in and of itself, and a good human, to be completely honest. That should be your ultimate goal. As you get into travel, maybe it gets into more of the, hey, can we win this tournament? Can we do this kind of thing? But at the beginning stages, it's not like that. It shouldn't be like that. Truthfully, 5, 6-year-olds should not be going into a game and being like, I just want to score 15 goals and I want to win. Like, what are you learning as a player? What are you learning as a teammate through that process? So that's what I always say. And I still have that conversation with my parents when it's like, well, why did we not win that game? And so I think that's a hard thing for some parents and to understand and to learn. But once you grasp that and you see it at U16, U17, and you're like, you know what, I'm super grateful for what we did way back in PDA, then you have a better understanding of it.
Yeah. Paul, you've been through it as well, and I know you're a coach in that PDA program there at Sport Club. What would you add to that if you were talking to a parent?
Yeah, I think, to Dustin's point is are you going to be with a program or a coach who's focusing on development? And the culture is huge. So it's regardless of the club, from team to team, the culture can change, depending on the coach, depending on the kids you're with, depending on your parents you're with. But it has to be fun. And the development still at the young age has to be, first and foremost. Everything else take care of itself in the end, and that's where you got to figure out where you need to land club wise or team wise, stuff like that. But Matt mentioned earlier, the kid has to enjoy it. Multi-sport athletes is common when you're young, and I think there's different sports that really complement other sports, and it's good for kids to be able to do that. But if you get to a point where you have to focus on one sport and drop another one for the sake of that sport, is that worth it to you as well? So find that balance, find out what you're really interested in, what you want to work towards.
Yeah. I think that's key, and we didn't talk about it enough, is that kids need to enjoy it, right? Like, you can go out and you can train, and I remember as a competitive coach working in the PDA program, like, I wanted the kids to get it. There were times they just weren't, and they were kicking balls around and just being goofy and like, come on guys, we got to get this together. But there is something about letting kids have fun while they're out there, but teaching them the things that they're there to learn, and the things that they're going to help them be successful down the road. And once they can have fun doing it, and they can see the progress that they're making, and, oh, I beat that kid last year, I couldn't do that. Or I made the right pass that time and I didn't the last 3 times, right? And they see success start coming,
Mhm.
they've already got, to Matt's point, the fundamentals to be able to do that. And now they're seeing the game differently and they're building upon it to move forward, to play out of the back, to hit that pass, to switch, across the back and go up the left side of the field instead of the right all the time. But they have to have fun. It has to be a fun environment to do that, or they're not going to enjoy the game and they're not going to last long.
Mhm.
So, Matt, any closing thoughts that you would share with parents, with coaches, or even young players if you're sitting down to talk with a group of players in your program that the question, I guess what I'm asking is like, what does success for a kid look like at that age? Maybe that's the question. I'll ignore the parents for a minute. What does success look like for a kid walking off the field from a training session or from a PDA game on a Saturday morning?
I mean, I would just say smiling for sure. They're just having a good time. But the one thing we tried this. This is kind of maybe off subject a little bit, but one thing to kind of get people off track of like the scoreboard is, and I've done it with my travel teams, is we have a clicker and we do like a pass count.
Mhm.
And I mean, these young kids, one of our 10U teams did in a 50-minute games had 155 connected passes. So, look at that. I mean, that's pretty impressive for a bunch of 9 and 10-year-old kids stringing the ball 155 times. So little things like that, turn into like success moments for these kids. And I
Mhm.
think that, yeah, like you said, these kids know. I mean, they're playing a game outside, they're with their friends. They know who wins. Everybody knows who wins. They're competitive by nature,
Mhm.
and that's good. We want these kids to be competitors, competitors by nature. But they just can't get overwhelmed and let that ruin their weekend, let them ruin their
Mhm.
night, yada yada yada. But so just trying to implement little things like that has just been it's been a lot of fun, and we had it with all of our teams, and we're definitely going to do that again. Such a great idea that Paul had actually multiple years ago when his daughter was in the travel side. I've been doing it with my travel team this year. So it's just those little things that you get these kids off just the winning side. Yeah, you want them to, they want to. We all know that's why they're out there. Nobody wants to go into a game want to lose. I don't know anybody just wants to lose. I'm not trying to lose these games, but I'm not willing to change to win a game, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
In way of development. I'm not going to change I mean, I'm not going to win a game over development. It's just not in my DNA for some reason. So, and unfortunately, the coaching world, especially now, like I said earlier, it's just a snowball effect. And especially down in Indy, I've got a lot of friends down there. It is very, very cutthroat. Kids moving like
Mhm.
crazy.
Mhm.
Growing up, Paul talked a little about culture, like, why are we playing game? Why are we involved in sports? Is it just because we want to go to college to get a scholarship, to go pro? Like, there's so many little lessons, valuable lessons that we can learn being a part of a team, your friendships. And these kids down in these competitive um, clubs, I mean, they got new kids coming in every week. They don't even know who's on their team. They go, go to a tournament. They got 3 guest players, that to me is, yeah, you want these kids to get to where they want to go, but I'm more of a like, hey, this is my team. I want a culture. I want, so I just think there's so many valuable lessons that we're, I think we're getting away from of
Mhm.
why, I got involved in sports
Mhm.
and what valuable lessons it taught me into my own, my career now. Even I'm just being what my career is, it's just such valuable lessons that, there's no price tag that we can put on these things. And so I know you're going to probably talk about parents. So as a parent, for me, I think, yeah, I don't think parents ever, they want the best for their kids,
Mhm.
100%. That's why they're um, sometimes screaming at them, or, on the sidelines, why are you not doing this? They want the best from 'em. But if they can just sit back and just kind of enjoy the ride, and just kind of nurture their environment, trust the coaches, be a part of it. I think they're going to be a lot happier, and whatever happens to the kid, it happens to the kid. Let them be in the driver's seat. They want to go play high school, let them play, they want to play college, they want to go further. Throw the ball in their court, because they're the ones that have to make they're the ones that have to make that, the commitment, the sacrifices, these guys that are at the top of the, they're sacrificing so much, so that's my recommendation to parents is just, just enjoy it. Try to nurture them, try to be try to support them for sure, and play out there with them in the backyard, or, hey, you want to do this, watching the game. But, the ones that are forceful, that make them do this and that, they're going to end up hating the game. Their dream of them going to Duke or Man City or wherever, it's squashed. You know what I mean? So, it's a tough beast right now. Youth sports is very, very, very competitive. And, it's surprising to see how talented these kids are. And we're in Little Fort Wayne, there's kids all over the world that are just so talented. So how can we keep it in perspective, have fun? So,
yeah. Good words, Matt. Thanks for joining us tonight, man. Been looking forward to having you on for a long time. As we even started the podcast, I remember having a conversation with you about getting you on some point, and we'll do it again. So, thanks for the wisdom. Thanks for what you do for youth sports, for our kids here in Fort Wayne, and developing not only their skills and fundamentals, but their love of the game at an early age. Appreciate you for that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you guys very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Sure. We'll do it again, Matt.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. All right. That was Matt Hein from Fort Wayne Sport Club, Player Development Academy, developing young players at the earliest ages, and they do it well. And there are other clubs that are doing that here in town. Fort Wayne United, I know the St. Joe Soccer is doing that. There's C3 Sports doing it. There's Fort Wayne Fusion that we talked to last week, all developing players at young ages. So they're not the only ones in town, but Matt is devoted himself in his career to this and thought he would be a great one to talk to about player development. If you have questions about that, you've got kids maybe that are interested in playing, and you're like, as a parent, I don't know what the landscape of youth soccer looks like, reach out to us. We may not have the answers, but we can certainly help get you connected to the people you want to connect with, and maybe they can answer your questions. So reach out to us at info@fortwaynefooty.com, and we'll get back in touch with you or connect you with the right people. Guys, any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode about young player development?
No, I think we're still learning, and the landscape of US soccer is changing. And so it will evolve as it continues to evolve. But I think that, we're doing it in the right way in a lot of clubs, in a lot of areas. And so I think the future is exciting to see. Again, if we can get behind let's develop these kids and not just win games, I think that will change the trajectory of a lot of these players' lives as it comes down to soccer.
Yeah, I think you're right. U.S. soccer, I think, has realized that they need to start changing things, and I'm excited to see if they can do it and how they decide to do it. And one thing we didn't mention too much, I know on the PDA program, is when we were growing up, the coaches were parents who probably didn't play soccer, but at Sport Club, I know we rely a lot. It wouldn't work without our parent coaches. And the cool thing is, and I've been with them for almost 10 years now, is I've noticed we've got some really good parent coaches, especially in the more recent years, because they've all grown up playing soccer. So I think that's also part of the culture. It's just as more people play it, there'll be more of their own kids who are playing it. So I think it's just a great infusion of soccer culture that's growing.
Yeah. And I think too that the perspective, we can't talk about it enough. The perspective of a parent or a grandparent who wants their kid to learn the game, not just be a winner at everything they do, especially at an early age. We can't stress that enough. I'm a competitive person. When I go out on the field, I want to win. I don't care if it's a rec game. When my son steps out on the field or my daughter steps out on the court, like, I want them to win, right? But I also, as I've matured as a player, I had to learn, lost some pretty big games when I was playing in high school and college. I had to learn through that lessons that if I would have learned maybe as a younger athlete, I wouldn't have had to suffer as much as suffer's a relative word there, but as a high school and college athlete, right? So there's something about that. And again, man, the lessons kids can learn, kids are resilient. Let them learn the lessons then when they're young and they're learning the skills that will help them get over that hump instead of getting behind. Right. I was going to close with a comment. I think I'll save it for next week because I think it's more relevant to next week and as we step into more of the travel academy. But it's something kids can learn now at the earliest stages that if they haven't learned, what does it look like in that next phase? So I'll save that comment for next week. Thanks for joining us. We will have another guest next week. We're not quite sure who it is. We got a couple feelers out there for next week to talk about this next phase of player development. So if you've got questions for us about this first phase, if you got questions that you'd like to see us address next week as players move to a full field and learn how to play 11v11 on a larger field, that will help us set up next week's show even better. So let us know, info@fortwaynesfooty.com, comment on YouTube or on Facebook, wherever you happen to be watching or listening later this week as we get this posted as an audio podcast. Thanks for being part of what we do. Thanks for being part of the soccer community in Fort Wayne, and we'll see you next time.